What do you think about when you think of the United Kingdom? Fancy people with posh accent drinking tea, or people with less fancy accent drinking warm ale in carpeted pubs? Or maybe some of the best Indian restaurants outside of India? Well, either way, you're right. The UK is a relatively small country with a big population and an even bigger history. I mean, it once was perhaps the largest empire ever to exist. Their king is not only king here, but also over countries such as Canada and Australia. And it's home to the most watched sports league in the world. This is the United Kingdom Explained. The United Kingdom has a total land area of 242,495 square kilometers. This does not include the Crown Dependencies and overseas territories, which we'll discuss a bit later. The UK is the 78th largest nation in the world, between Guinea and Uganda, and it's also the 7th largest island nation. The island of Great Britain makes up most of the UK's area, with the rest coming from Northern Ireland and various surrounding small islands. England is the largest country in the United Kingdom and accounts for over half of the total area. And at this point you're probably thinking, wait, isn't the United Kingdom the country? How can England also be a country? Well, we'll discuss that a bit later as well. Just know that England is the largest of the UK countries, followed by Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. The highest point is Ben Nevis, a 1,345 meter tall mountain in Scotland. Holme-Fen in Cambridgeshire is the lowest point in the country. It sits 2.75 meters below sea level, and the Severn is the UK's longest river, measuring 354 kilometers. Loch Ness is the UK's largest lake, as it covers an area of 396 square kilometers. The most important natural resources of the United Kingdom have changed over time. Lead was historically one of the country's most important resources, but since we discovered the problem of lead poisoning, demand has dropped slightly. And the same process has been happening or is starting to happen for fossil fuels such as coal, methane and oil, the last of which largely comes from the continental shelf of the North Sea. However, the UK has massive wind power capacity due to its windy conditions, and this resource will likely grow in importance. Other key resources include limestone, iron, salt and clay. Aside from some parts of Scotland being subarctic and tundra, the UK has a temperate climate. The country gets a lot of rain, and this is what allows for the lush grassy terrain for which the UK is famous. But it doesn't rain all the time though, and summers can be quite sunny and actually kinda hot. And these hot summers are actually becoming a growing issue due to climate change, as many UK homes and infrastructure were built long before air conditioning was needed or even possible. The highest temperature ever recorded in the UK was 40.3 degrees Celsius, and it happened in Coningsby, Lincolnshire on July 20th, 2022. The lowest temperature was a negative 27.2 degrees Celsius, recorded at Braemar in the Grampian Mountains of Scotland on February 11th, 1895, and also on the 10th of January 1982. The population of the United Kingdom is about 67 million, making it the 22nd most populous country in the world, right between France and Tanzania. England has by far the largest population of the four countries that make up the United Kingdom, with an estimated 56,536,000 people living there. Scotland is the second most populous country, followed by Wales and then Northern Ireland. The vast majority of the population speak English, with small pockets in Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland speaking Scots, Welsh and Irish respectively. And the most spoken immigrant languages are Polish, Romanian, Punjabi and Urdu. And this reflects the UK immigration patterns of recent decades. London is the capital of the United Kingdom, and with a population of about 8.8 million, it's by far the largest city. London is home to the Palace of Westminster, where both Houses of Parliament meet, and Buckingham Palace, which is the administrative headquarters of the monarch of the UK. Edinburgh, Cardiff and Belfast are the respective capitals of Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and other notable cities in the UK include Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, Leeds and Glasgow. The UK is a parliamentary constitutional monarchy. The head of state in the UK is the monarch, who is currently King Charles III, who was crowned in 2023, and the monarch is also the supreme governor of the Church of England. Charles' mother, Queen Elizabeth II, was the monarch for 70 years, which is the longest reign in British history and the second longest reign of any monarch in world history. But did you know that Charles isn't just king in the UK? He is also king of 14 other Commonwealth realms, including Canada, Australia, Papua New Guinea, New Zealand and Jamaica. The monarch holds the largest ceremonial role and doesn't directly influence legislation. and it's probably worth noting that not all Britons like their monarchy. About 62% of Britons support the monarchy, 26% support an elected head of state, while the remaining population is just unsure. And while we may associate the UK with its monarchy, it's worth keeping in mind that roughly a quarter of Britons actually favour republicanism, meaning they would prefer the UK to be a republic without the monarch. But I feel like this is pretty common, especially in Western nations who still have a monarchy in place. The head of government is the Prime Minister, with the current 79th in order being Rishi Sunak, who assumed office in 2022. In the UK, people drive on the left side of the road. There is no official language, but since this is the birthplace of English, it's the de facto national language. And at this point, we should probably finally explain what the United Kingdom is. If the UK is a country, how can England also be a country? Well, England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland are all referred to as countries. They have their own governments with varying degrees of authority. Laws passed by the Westminster typically apply to England and Wales, but not always to Scotland and Northern Ireland. Also, we might as well reveal that the official name of the whole country is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And while all the countries of the United Kingdom have the same foreign policy, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland each have their own devolved governments with varying degrees of power. Scotland's is the most prominent, and Northern Ireland's has been plagued by refusal to cooperate between Unionists and Republicans. More on those later, but to simplify, many people in Northern Ireland would prefer their country leave the UK and unify with the Republic of Ireland. But Scotland also has a strong independent movement, and they even held a vote in 2014 asking their people if Scotland should become an independent country, with the yes side barely losing 44.7% to 55.3%. The UK is a highly developed social market economy. Their nominal GDP is roughly $3 trillion, which makes theirs the sixth largest economy of any country on earth. This ranking puts the UK economy just below India's and just above France's. The currency of the UK is sterling, of which the pound is the main unit. The service sector accounts for about 81% of the UK economy, and much of this is connected to the tourism industry. In 2019, tourism contributed a total of £248.5 billion to the nation's GDP, with just over half of that money landing in London. And roughly 30 million people visited the UK in 2022, ranking it the 7th in the world. The UK's biggest exports are precious metals, crude oil, mechanical power generators, pharmaceuticals and cars. And the UK's top 5 export markets are the United States, Germany, Netherlands, Ireland and France. And their top import markets are the same, except replace Ireland with China. And the UK's trade deals have changed significantly since Brexit, but we're not going to get into that just yet. Instead, let's look at the history of this country. The earliest known humans arrived in these lands around 900,000 years ago. In the Bronze Age, people constructed the famous Stonehenge, a massive circle of stones that's one of the world's most famous prehistoric monuments. In 55 BC, Julius Caesar arrived on the shores of Britain but failed to establish a long-lasting presence. About 100 years later, the Roman Emperor Claudius launched a full-scale attack and Britain's Roman era began. The Romans began building the massive Hadrian's Wall in the year 122. And as the Roman Empire fell apart, the Romans left Britain around 410 and were replaced by Germanic-speaking tribes such as the Angles, Jutes and Saxons. King Athelstan was crowned in 925, and many historians recognize him as the first king of the unified England. A little more than a century later, in 1066, William the Conqueror of Normandy conquered England, and in the following decades, the Normans conquered Wales as well, and since, the two countries have largely been unified. In 1169, Anglo-Norman mercenaries invaded Ireland, beginning the process of nearly 1,000 years of English and Irish conflict on the island. Throughout the Middle Ages, England fought in various wars, including the Crusades, the Scottish Wars of Independence, and the 100 Wars against France. And the English defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 is a symbolic of England's emergence as a dominant naval power. The English and Scottish crowns were officially united when Elizabeth I died without an heir, and James VI of Scotland became James I of England and Scotland. In the mid-17th century, there was the brutal English Civil War, which the parliamentarians won and then replaced the monarchy, but only briefly. England and Scotland formally became a single nation with the Acts of Union in 1707. In subsequent centuries, the UK colonized many parts of the world, becoming by some criteria the largest empire the world has ever known. And at various points, the British Empire controlled all or parts of many modern-day countries. The British Empire and the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century made the UK a very rich nation. However, most of that money stayed in the hands of the already rich. While there were some benefits to some people living in colonized lands, the British Empire was also guilty of incredible cruelty, violence and destructive resource extraction. And these issues continue well into the 20th century. The UK played a crucial role in both world wars. Afterward, they remained a key ally of the United States and eventually embarked upon a process of decolonization. Unfortunately, violence continued in Ireland, and most of the island of Ireland became independent in 1922 after the Irish War of Independence. But the troubles lasted from the late 1960s to 1998 and saw repeated bursts of violence between the Republican paramilitaries such as the IRA and Loyalist paramilitaries and the British military. The UK joined the European Economic Community in 1973, which eventually became the European Union. On the 24th of June 2016, the UK voted to leave the European Union by a very narrow margin of 51.9% to the winning side. The Brexit campaign was a divisive and controversial one, and its long-term effects remain to be seen. The UK keeps close diplomatic and economic ties with other nations of the Commonwealth. Even countries without direct ties to the British Empire have joined the group, including Mozambique, Rwanda and Gabon. And the UK spends about £45.9 billion on defense, and the UK also possesses nuclear weapons. Looking into the sports side of things, some of the world's most played sports have their origins in the UK. These include football, rugby and cricket. England's Premier League is the most watched sports league in the world and holds some of the most famous sports teams on the planet, such as Manchester United, Liverpool and Arsenal. Often the separate nations of the UK compete individually in national sports. For example, in football, Scots often refer to England as the Old Enemy. The England's men's national team has won each of the Football, Rugby Union and Cricket World Cups, while Team Great Britain has won the Men's Rugby League World Cup 3 times. England has also won the Women's Rugby World Cup twice and the Women's Cricket World Cup 4 times. Other popular sports include tennis, boxing, darts, snooker and track and field. Now looking at British music, it's famous all over the world. And British prominence in world pop music began with a British invasion of rock music in the 1960s. First, there was a band from Liverpool called the Beatles, you may have heard of them. Following them, over the years there were bands and artists such as the Rolling Stones, Spice Girls and Robbie Williams. And British artists have also been keen to electronic music and hip-hop. Right now, one of the most popular music genres in the world is UK drill. This music is largely created by Black Britons and highlights how immigrant communities have shaped British culture. Some of the most popular British hip-hop and drill artists include Stormzy, Dave and Central C. Britain is also famous for its television and film industries. The show Coronation Street is the world's longest-running television soap opera. And some famous British actors include Emma Thompson, Sacha Baron Cohen and Kate Winslet. Now, there are more British tourist attractions than we could possibly name. But there are a few obvious ones, such as the already mentioned Hadrian's Wall and Stonehenge. But also the Tower of London, Buckingham Palace and the British Museum. And if you're in Scotland in August, you should definitely check out the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Or you can check out the Roman baths in the aptly named town of Bath. And also you can visit Oxford and see the world's second oldest university. Or if you're a Game of Thrones fans, you can see where they filmed much of the series in Northern Ireland. Few countries have played such a major role in world history as the United Kingdom. It's a country of aristocrats who can trace their lineage back a millennium. It's a country of gruff-speaking, pint-drinking football fans. It's a country of dancehall and hip-hop artists. And it's a country of haggis-eating Scots. It's all this and so much more. And we had to leave out a lot for this video, so chime in below and say what you think everybody should know about the UK. And I actually might have to do an episode 2 about this country. Or else, click one of the videos on your screen right now to go learn more about the country in the world, and I see you there.